Hello, this is Cohousing, the Cohousing Podcast, and I'm Charles Durrett, author and principal architect at the Cohousing Company. Today's episode, we're discussing the Canadian Cohousing Network. The network exists to connect people and communities, share knowledge and resources, and help define what cohousing is, and most importantly, promote cohousing and making it more and more known. I'm especially pleased today to be joined by a long-term friend and colleague, Alan Carpenter, co-founder and co-director of the Canadian Cohousing Network. And I want to just mention about your construction
Oh,
experience.
Um, yes, I've been involved in the construction industry since 1971 and mostly building single family homes.
What got you interested in co-housing? That's not the normal single-family house builder interest. What got
No,
you interested in it?
well, that was a bit of a story, Chuck. What happened for me is back in 1989, I had met this new gal who came into my life, and I ended up taking a personal growth workshop called Pursuit of Excellence that she had been to. So I could sort of understand being able to take self responsibility for your own life. And after taking that workshop, we ended up building our single family dream home, 5 level, 3200 square foot split level overlooking the valley. And I was feeling better about myself as a result of the workshop. And I thought we had arrived. This is what the North American dream is having this big place overlooking the valley with 2 cars and family. But as a result, I felt still very alone and isolated. I still felt like something was missing. So I started to look at designing a new kind of neighborhood where there was more of a sense of connection because I was starting to feel more comfortable connecting with people and started to tell about this pedestrian oriented community that I was coming up with and told a few friends about it. And they introduced me to this information session on co-housing in Vancouver. Said, hey, this is something similar to what you're talking about. So I went there and discovered this concept of co-housing, of residents getting involved in developing their own neighborhoods. And I fell in love because it had all the answers of all the questions about how to make this actually work and what kind of scale do you need and how do people get involved and what does it look like and how does the pedestrian orientation actually work so you can actually get groceries to your home. And I fell in love with it. So immediately I closed down my construction business. It took me about 6 months to wind things up. And I got passionate about co-housing. I wanted to form the International Cohousing Society at the time and create a nonprofit to do that. So I pulled my wife in to sign the documents. That was her role. And Fritz Verdant. Fritz was interested in co-housing. He was willing to come along the journey and stayed as a director for probably 2, 3 years. I dedicated my life to co-housing ever since.
I mean, when I first met you, Alan, we were doing the first Getting It Built workshop in Canada for what is now called Windsong Cohousing, now built 35 years or something like that. And the Getting It Built workshop was being held in your living room. Were you planning on moving to Windsong at that time?
No, I certainly wasn't. Give you a little bit of context. My wife worked with people all day, so when she got home from work, she wanted to kick her feet up by the fireplace and read a book. She was tired of dealing with people all day. And so she didn't want to have anything to do with this idea of communities. So I was just promoting the idea, helping groups out at that point in time and trying to figure out how to talk her into it.
You know, when you factor in Vancouver co-housing, I mean, it was started by a young lady, 29 years old, who was a physical therapist. And she noted to her brother and I, Jonas Jonken, that when she comes home from work at night, she absolutely needs a supportive environment, though she couldn't afford it. Well, she was able to move into a modest, abode there in Vancouver co-housing, which worked fine because they have a large 6,100 square foot common house. And as a result, instead of 1,000 square foot house, she had a 7,100 square foot house. And her favorite people were inhabiting some of it, people that she knew and cared about and all the rest. And I think it's important to say that as an activist, Alan has helped make other co housing communities like Compass Co-housing, which is under construction now, right?
Yes.
And Yarrow Co-housing in Chilliwack and Vancouver Co-housing. You had something to do with that as well. Those are very successful, especially Vancouver, Windsong, and I expect Compass to be very, very successful. How far along is Compass?
Well, they're doing the outside finishes on the building right now,
And
and
that's
this,
in
and
Langley.
that's right. And they expect to be moved in October
And they
this
still
year.
have units left, don't they?
Yeah, they have about 6 units left for sale still. So that's right. I'm surprised that there's still units for sale. What I know about co-housing, they say the costs are high right now and the market's down a bit. But for what you're really getting, it's still very, very inexpensive.
Affordability is just one out of many issues, including, who do my kids play with? Why don't they run outside and play with other kids now? Well, co-housing is just so much easier to do that. The kids being able to run outside is a huge boon for parents. Seniors having others to talk to just makes so much sense. And, you know, I don't know about Canada, but I think it's very similar. Pre-pandemic, Psychology Today said that 40% of seniors in the US are lonely, pathologically lonely, and post pandemic, it's running about 50%. And I mean, as far as I know, co-housing is a key antidote to that reality. Are you finding that?
Oh, without a doubt. Me being a senior now, and my family's sort of grown up and left the nest. I have a relationship with all the young people here. I know them. It's just a joy watching them grow up and how they respond to the adults here. They learn how to talk to adults and care for them. And so the relationship is really rich.
Mm, yeah. You moved into Windsong what year?
1996, July 19th. I remember the day.
And Windsong is 34 houses?
34, yes.
Yeah. And in one building, which is thanks to the beavers, they set us up. We kind of had to put it all in one building. A long story by itself. How have you liked living there?
Oh, I could not live any other way. I believe that this is the ultimate lifestyle. When I was in my 3,200 square foot home, I was planning to build a 4,800 square foot home on 5 acres of land as my next upgrade to find some meaning in life. But now at Windsong, I certainly have my 6,000 square feet and 5 acres of land, but I only had to pay for the 1,500 square feet that I'm living in and share the other 4,500 square feet with my neighbors. And they help me maintain the 6 acres. So the maintenance is so much less. And I still got access to my 4 or 5 cars that I've always wanted, but I only have to own one. So it's $1 billion lifestyle at a very affordable price.
Affordability is a funny thing, and, when people tell me I'm buying, a 1,000 square foot condo for exorbitant price, any single abode, any by yourself arrangement, basically. It just goes to show it really does pay to have allies in the creation. Obviously, you have to have allies to create a new neighborhood. And who doesn't want to live in a high functioning neighborhood? That's projects have had difficulties over the years, sometimes getting approved in their neighborhood because people fear few things more than change. And yet, change is the one inevitability. So, reconciling the fear of change with the inevitability of change seems to be a great thing for co housing groups to do in the context of urban planning, for example. And a line I've heard a lot lately is who doesn't want a high functioning neighborhood in their town? Because you walk onto a co-housing site and it's palpable. Does the co-housing network offer tours? Do they have any kind of a program for that?
Well, each community usually offers tours. Like in Windsong, we have tours set up so people can come and visit visit us any Saturday.
Sometimes when I'm up in Canada, I've designed 6 co-housing communities there now, and I marvel at how much people do know about co-housing in Canada. I mean, I've been on the Canadian Broadcasting Company, CBC, several times, but you are very magnanimous in helping groups get built in Canada and, really popularize the notion there. And there seems to be an interest in growing a capacity for a more compassionate living environment. Alan, why do you feel like people are so ready to consider co-housing in Canada?
Well, I think people are considering co-housing anywhere because I think there's a part of us that strive to have connection or realize that we are connected to each other and we want to learn how to be more connected. And so I think that's inside of all of us. So that's
Right.
why I think people are wanting to get back to that village of old where we knew and cared about our neighbors.
Right. In fact, the Danes would say that we're not doing anything new here. We're just consciously creating what used to happen naturally. And now we have to sort of reinvent it for the 21st century. That's why the Getting It Built workshop is so critical because it says, okay, now if we're going to give cooperation the benefit of the doubt as a norm, what would that look like, and what would that look like in the context of creating it? What's the financing look like? What's the group process look like? The group process being the most important. I bring that up because that's how we met at the workshop for that particular group. The group process is so important that it's clear to me that I don't care how much land you have or how much money you have. If you don't know how to work together as a group, you're stifled. And I found an embracing of that notion. How do we work together? There was almost a curiosity about that. We had some hiccups along the way in Windsong. For example, the guys who kept saying, what about my RV? and stuff like that. But one of the things I really love about co-housing is people are willing to be patient and teach each other a little bit about how to imagine, 1 + 1 = 3. I have an idea, you have an idea, and together we come up with a third idea that's better. When I think about what got the Danes started, it was definitely philosophers in the 1850s pounded that drum of cooperation throughout the 1800s and into the 19th century, and it really set co-housing up for success there. Um, what would you say has been the most effective way in Canada getting the word out? Again, I feel I'm impressed with how many people are familiar with it there. I mean, I don't know what it is in the US. I think it's 1 or 2% of the population that can say, I know about co-housing. And I kind of feel like in Canada, even though we have about per capita the same amount of co-housing, but I still feel like it's about 3 to 4% of the Canadians have a better sense of what we're talking about when we get started. What would you say attributes to that?
Well, I'm not sure about that. I think if I look at the States, I believe more people there know about co-housing than they
You
do
do?
here. So we may have the same kind of perspective when we look outwards. Uh, I know every conversation I have with anybody anywhere, it, I always tend to lead that to co-housing.
How's that going?
Well, it's going good. I'm learning more effectively. I try to listen to what their interest is and try to guide it more within their interest. And if they're not interested in it, I just sort of drop the topic instead of continuing on.
Yeah, there usually is some aspect of life that you can tie back to co-housing. For example, what I'm running into these days in the US is all the millennials and young people are worried about affordability and seniors, for example. And, I find that my bills are about $1,000 less per month than people I know who live in single family houses, largely because we cooperate. We have one lawnmower for 34 houses, and that's fine. Do you know the shortest poem in the English language, Alan?
Oh,
It's Me, We,
okay.
written in 1974, and it implies that I'll never reach my potential until we reach our potential.
Mm.
The poet really came to the conclusion we are capable of so much more than I am personally. But if we get together, it's easier to bring them along. Can you speak to how you feel it may be having an impact on our efforts to create a more viable society? Do you have any thoughts about that?
Well, I believe that if you look at all the issues around the world, co-housing deals with all of those issues because we're connected in communities. So we learn how to care for each other and learn how to care for ourselves. We learn how to care for the planet. So in co-housing, you don't have the crime or household violence and that kind of thing. We learned how to cooperate. So we're not using our six guns to deal with our differences. We're learning how to listen to each other and communicate at a whole different level with our differences. And that can solve any issues that I think we have on this planet.
Yeah, I mean, the cultural morphing, cultural change is the challenge, but you're right by emphasizing that it's really one person at a time who wakes up one morning and says, "Hey, my life would be easier, more convenient, more practical, more economical, more emotionally safe, more physically safe, more healthy if I could do some of the things in my life with others, not just doing everything by myself, basically. There's so much room for, a better life at the cooperation level. Like North America in general, we live quite distant from each other. We're not used to cooperating with each other. How do we make co-housing more popular in North America?
That's a tough one. I know we have this strong, independent kind of belief system that we sort of built our life around, and it's hard to shift from that into learning how to be cooperative. So it's a bit of a struggle for a lot of people to make that shift. And we just got to keep telling people what it's about and tell them what our experiences is and be there to support them in their next steps towards that ideal if that's something they're ready for. I think that's all we can do. Um,
And just starts with an attitude shift, which is, I don't have to be so afraid of people. I argue that it takes two things to learn to live in co-housing. One is to learn to listen, and most people I know choose to embrace that concept. I mean, you can't get to 1 + 1 = 3 unless everybody's paying attention. And then the other thing, theoretically, we all know how to read, but I'm always surprised how readership is going down. And a reporter called me and she wondered why co housing had slowed down a little bit in the US. And she came to the conclusion herself that in the beginning, there was just a book, which I think you read, with a beginning, a middle, and an end, and said, this is what co housing is, and this is how you implement co housing. And now you go to the net and it's just gobbledygook, helter skelter all over the place, and people just get lost. Do you have any sense of how we can get co-housing so that people are looking at it as a whole and as a concept that's straightforward as opposed to complicated?
I think a lot of how we spread cohousing is through personal networking. So I think it happens by our connections with each other. So I think the more we talk to each other, the more we can help encourage people to consider this idea.
Like old village making, it's true.
That's right.
Um, but, now with automobiles and there's so many roads that are not that walkable, et cetera, it's hard to be brushing shoulders with neighbors outside of co-housing. I mean, it's just the landscape is not set up for it. So I think we have to use media somehow.
Yeah, well, that's an interesting statement, but I do a lot of walking in my neighborhood and I see a couple of neighbors all of a sudden getting together in a cul-de-sac. I get into a conversation with them. Or as I walk along the street, I'll try to get into a conversation with somebody.
Of all the co-housing books that you've read, which ones did you feel like fed you the most? Because there's a lot of them out there now.
I think it was sort of the second edition is the one I sort of liked the best.
Co-housing communities, a contemporary approach to housing ourselves.
That's right.
Yeah.
But I think it was the first one I read cover to cover and probably absorbed just about every page of that book.
It's still available. It's called Creating Co-housing.
Yeah.
And again, it's got a beginning, a middle, and an end. It really dwells on the launch. How do we get started? On the journey. How do we make it smooth sailing? The creation, and the landing. How do we settle? Exactly. It really is. Pretty comprehensive. Pretty comprehensive. These days, there are other books like Co-Housing Communities, which really dwells on the design phase. I mean, each of those three phases I just described have their own trajectory. And the design phase is the one that I always worry about the most, mostly because I'm an architect, I guess. But, good design very much facilitates community. There's no doubt about it. In fact, the community is 100% built by the time you move in, no doubt about it. But the architecture's number one responsibility is to maintain the community a year after the honeymoon has worn off. And I can't think of any better example than yours. You walk out your front door and you probably feel at peace, not in any protracted conversation, but you feel also at peace should you desire a conversation. Would you agree with
Mhm.
that?
Oh, definitely.
I was going to ask you how could and you describe co-housing's influence on your own life?
Well, I don't feel alone anymore. I think if I still lived in that single family home, I wouldn't feel like I had purpose anymore or feel any sense of connection to anything. But here, I feel valued here and I feel a great sense of connection and there's such joy in living here. And of course, there's still some struggles when I'm learning through how to be more effective in cooperating. And I still got baggage from the past that I deal with and still peeling off the layers. And even that is thrilling too, me as well, because I think every day I'm learning how to be a better person, a better part of the planet here. And it's just so much joy. And it's that, and I guess I came from a place where I'm sort of introverted and very shy, and I isolated myself. So I starved from connection. So this is like a real healing process for me. It's like it gave me a life.
When somebody walks into a co-housing village, it's palpable that this is a unique environment where people know and care about each other and support each other. That's obvious. And it's not just the relationships, though that is big. It's also the environment that sets up for the possibility of those relationships to develop. 40% of the general population is introverts, 60% extroverts. And it's really about 60% introverts that move into co-housing. And I think there's a lot of reasons for that. And one of them is you don't have to plan a social life, which is half of the trouble. You can just go down to the common house and be with others and play checkers and put a puzzle together and whatever the going event is, listen to music, do art. I'm always surprised all the creative things I see in your common house. People want to be kids who come home from, college and do a little recital in the common house and with four or five of their friends. And you don't have to go at all. But how convenient is that? You can walk, it's covered the whole way. I mean, it doesn't get any more convenient than that. It's living at the most basic of levels. I mean, it fuels the heart, no doubt about it. But it's an interesting question. How do you get to the joy? How do you measure joy? And I don't think it's possible, but I think you can measure it by virtue of I've measured smiles per half hour, for example. I've gone into the common house when somebody's doing a recital of some kind, a piano player and a guitar player are doing something for. And there's often 20 or 30 people in my common house that'll go down and listen to that, and I'm just astounded by how much people are much more smiling under those circumstances. And it's just right there. It's just right there at home, basically. And so I guess you have to use smiles per half hour to enjoy to describe joy at any level. Who
That's
knows?
right. Yeah,
Yeah.
that sounds
It's
good.
it's okay. And it's interesting to me that we have to measure it all, but we do because, we live in data-driven environments these days. It's crazy that it feels like people don't follow their heart, they follow the data.
If you talk to retired people and see that they're still alive, that's probably a good indication of joy.
Longevity makes a big difference.
Longevity is.
We've had 8 people, I mean, 10 people die at our co-housing, 8 of them died at home. That's a metric in my mind. The neighbors basically took care of them in their waning months. They had some professional help, but the neighbors brought the chicken soup and brought a lot of other things that made the hugest of differences to these people, which was not strangers. It was familiar faces, basically. Hey, you want me to pick up your daughter and bring her over, et cetera, et cetera. The number of times when I see it, my co-housing and your community, a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old that'll run out the door and run over to a friend's houses and watch cartoons on a Saturday morning and have breakfast with the neighbors. Just goes on and on. So I guess
Does
that's what we have to measure more. It's funny, there's so many factors about co-housing that almost requires an anthropologist to study it. Like we use people hours in the common house as a metric to its success, but there's also smiles per half hour, just conviviality on the sidewalks, which I know there's a great deal in the glass covered street that your project inhabits. And, joy should be right there, but boy, talk about complicated to measure. People hours is easy. You could sit outside your house and probably there's 2 or 3 people hours going on right now, 5 or 6 people who are chatting for some duration, and, it's not none of it's quote unquote "required," but in many ways, it's all required to develop and, maintain a civilized society at some basic level. I'm going to the zoo this weekend. Do you want to go with me? We don't have common dinner tonight, but I'm going to plan a little potluck out here on the street. Do you want to do that? That happens week after week in that environment. And it reminds me when I walk through there, a small town in Italy, a small town in Portugal, where you just see people inhabiting the sidewalks, and unlike too much of other rest of North America.
so, Chuck, are you familiar with the documentary called The Blue Zone that
Oh, yeah,
talks
very
about?
familiar, and I've read
Yeah,
all of his books too. Dan
so that's a
Buettner.
good study on
Yeah.
the effects of joy and connection in our lives. We become healthier, we live longer. Um, yeah,
Yeah, and I just saw a special on, a woman who lives in, Sardinia with her 95-year-old mother, and Sardinia has is one of those blue zones, and it has more centurion or centennials than most everywhere else. I mean, it's only 4 or 5 blue zones in the world, and this woman is documenting her grandmother's life and how much she walks, how simple she eats. It always boils down to 3 things: eat right, mostly light; stay active, mostly low impact; and stay connected, i.e., community. And she really dwells on the fact that the community aspect of her mother's 95-year-old mother's well-being, and all of her mother's 97, 110-year-olds. These are all people that are interviewed on her show, and all these people that her mother knows and cares about. But the when it came to community, she made the point: never eat dinner alone. Can you imagine how many people in the world are eating dinner alone? And this mom of 95 never eats dinner alone. She makes sure there's at least a couple, 3, 5 people at her house or at another house or out between the houses or at a cafe. They're having dinner together, and the daughter feels that fuels life to a great extent. More than sustenance, it's real embodiment of togetherness, really. Breaking bread is probably one of the most timeless aspects of building community, no doubt about it. And co-housing makes that natural. We're still having dinner 4 or 5 times a week together, and it's a highlight. It's a real highlight. People really enjoy it. I don't like it when I have to cook for 35 people, but I only have to do that once a month. So, yeah. Yeah. What's your common dinner special?
what's my com? Oh,
Yeah, what
I do a mean veggie chili,
Wow, cool. Right on. A lot of cumin or a lot of, turmeric, or what do you put in there?
turmeric. Good question. I always make it different each time, so I throw in something new and different.
I know the
Then I
feeling.
usually make a Caesar salad to go with it.
Well, that's a good compliment, no doubt about it. You'd be very popular.
I agree.
Hey, well, I'm going to take this opportunity to thank you, my friend, very much. If you're in British Columbia in May, I will be doing a talk on May 19th at the University of Fraser Valley to the psychology department about my latest book. It's called Neuro-Inclusive Community Design. But I'm also doing a bigger, broader public presentation there because they're planning on building like 600 new houses around the university. So they wanted to do it as intelligently as possible. So I was extremely impressed with that. Not just high functioning neighborhoods, but very neuro-inclusive. Then on May 20th, I'm speaking at the Creekside Commons in Courtney. And this is one of the places that co-housing groups help the larger community. They're involved with helping 4 or 5 other co-housing communities get started and built. They're hosting me to come and do a talk. A lot of questions and answers, I suspect. On May 21st, I'm going to Pacific Gardens Co-housing in Nanaimo. And I'm looking forward to that. And I'm looking forward to seeing you there too, Alan.
Definitely.
And if this resonated with you at all, please consider subscribing, rating this episode if you feel like it, and sharing it with somebody interested in co-housing and living in sustainable neighborhoods where people know each other, care about each other, and support each other. As always, you can find more information at the Canadian Cohousing Network, along with our website, cohousingco.com. And you can also find the various books that we've written and courses that we're giving. I also want to thank the production staff who makes this very doable in our office, Natachai Kongajorn Kitsuk and Melissa Turnbull. And until next time, I'm your host, Charles Durrett. Thanks very much. Thanks for joining us on the Cohousing Podcast. If you're looking to learn more about co-housing and building a sustainable community, high-functioning neighborhoods, you can find more resources at cohousingco.com. And if this conversation resonated with you at all, please consider subscribing and sharing it with somebody interested in living in a sustainable neighborhood where people know each other, care about each other, and support each other. Until next time, I'm Charles Durrett. Thanks for being part of our conversation today.